So, Eye of the World, the first book in the Wheel of Time. So, I just do want to preface that right now I have read the first three books in the Wheel of Time and I'm currently halfway through book four. So, do bear that in mind. Although I will not be talking anything about the other books, I'll only be talking about the Eye of the World. I've been going through these books quite quickly, so this is still quite fresh in my mind. Now, I don't want to give too much away if this, I will be talking about spoilers later on, don't get me wrong. But for now, let me give you my spoiler-free opinions. So, The Eye of the World is interesting. The first 200 pages, I loved. Like, I really fucking enjoyed the first 200 pages of this book. So yeah, the first 200 pages were great. We're set in the kind of village setting of Emmonsfield. We get to know, Randall Thor, his friends, Matt, Perrin, Gwen, Nynaeve. And I just like the whole village setting. I don't know if that's because I myself kind of live in a suburban area where everyone knows everyone. I say that, and I live in London, the most densely populated city. And I live in this place in London that's the most suburban area where everyone knows everyone. We have like a local GP/doctor that everyone goes to, and much like this, there's the village wisdom, Nynaeve, who's kind of like the local healer and local guardian. And I just love those aspects of it. Jordan has a really great way of exploring culture in his books. Like in just only like 200 pages, I completely understand how Emmonsfield works. I understand the trading that they have with the rest of the world, and specifically like Andor and whatnot. Emmonsfield Tibet is a great resource that this village provides. Already I'm getting such a great sense of a well-defined world. And Jordan, even in the next couple of books, continues to just shine in this aspect. However, my concerns with this book come around like some of the middle parts, which I know, hearing from other people's opinions, that they don't like. I actually kind of love some of the middle parts in this book. However, it's the ending that just didn't really sit with me, which some people do love. Some people love the ending. I have mixed opinions on it. It mostly focuses on Rand al'Thor, who was our main protagonist for this series. So there's this mysterious woman called Moraine, and she has this warder, this big, beefy, just fighter of a man, your Aragon, Geralt of Rivia kind of sort of person called Lan, and they come in Emmonsfield. They're not local to Emmonsfield, they're these unknown presence, but they're guests right there. These two figures take these five young people to adventure along with a gleeman who's kind of like this bard sort of character. The adventure itself is not quite what I expected, but I liked a lot of it. I liked the first 200 pages of this book. I really loved it. In fact, the first, I would say 400 pages. I mean, the first 200 pages is all about setting up Emmonsfield. It's setting up all these characters like Rand. Mostly just Rand. This is a mostly Rand perspective, but we do get some perspective later on, like Perrin, who is one of Rand's friend, and some Nynaeve, just a little bit of Nynaeve there. My issue with this is that Rand is kind of boring. He's kind of a vanilla character, and it's kind of bad when the few chapters we get with Perrin and Nynaeve are far more engaging and far more interesting than any of Rand's chapter. Even if it's an uneventful chapter, it's still more interesting than Rand's chapters. And this is because Rand is kind of just an audience surrogate in some ways. And like I said, it's just a bit too vanilla for my liking for a protagonist. I expect a bit more from my protagonist, if I'm being honest. And because of this really slightly dull character, it kind of creates for pretty slow moments, especially towards the middle of the book when it's just Rand and another character who I won't spoil, and they kind of split off from the group and it's their own journey for a short while, and that kind of sometimes drags the story down a bit, in my opinion. But it's not solely on Rand as a character. There's some wider issues with it that I'll get onto later in my spoiler-filled review. But overall, I just want to say, despite I'm complaining a lot, I do like The Eye of the World. I had fun reading this book. It's totally not my style. Like, this is not something I would expect to like because it is a pretty uneventful book. It's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of visiting inns and whatnot. But there's a lot to like here. It's well defined in both in terms of its characters and its world. even if some of those characters still are not as well developed as I would expect to be. It's a good introduction. It's a good introduction, is what I say, and it serves as an introduction. This is just part 1 of 14, so we can't expect too much. All right, now let's get into the spoilers. So Moraine Sedai is an Aes Sedai who's kind of like a witch, not a witch. She's a magic person, and she senses that there's this chosen one-esque figures in this village, and she specifically has interest in these 3 boys, Mat, Rand, and Perrin, and she claims them to be this figure called Taraverin. I hope I'm saying that right. Taraverin. And what essentially Taraverin is a being who the Wheel of Time kind of fixed itself around it. You know, all the events kind of tie around this being. That's really cool. You know, we see a lot in stories that this chosen one-esque prophecy, and it also surrounds this one specific character. Here we kind of got 3. Technically speaking, we do have a chosen one still. It's still Rand's story. He's the Dragon Reborn, which is the chosen one. Taraverin, which is kind of like a second tier chosen one, I'm guessing. Yeah, so she's interested in these 3 boys. And also, there are these dark forces that are interested in them as well. And they're being chased by these darklings, these Midral peoples, and these Trollocs. And these Trollocs are like these half men, half animal creatures who wants them. They serve the Dark One, who is trapped in this prison called Shayol Ghul with a bunch of his minions called Forsakens. Once they're on the chase, it's very high intensity. I always get the feeling that these enemies are on their tail, and they're constantly moving. And while they're on this journey, I also love how hesitant they are towards Moraine. They don't know who this woman is. She is essentially a stranger who just came to their village, did a bunch of lightning magic, and just took them away. They don't know if they can trust her words. They don't know if she's even secretly working for this dark entity. And I like that aspect of it. That's something. I'm glad that these characters don't just go willy-nilly and just follow this random stranger. I like that there's conflict and tension in this group. Surprisingly, I do like the journey aspects of it. I like them just talking to each other. A lot of exposition is spoken to through this journey about the wider world, about the Aes Sedai culture. Moiraine is awesome. I loved Moiraine. I don't normally like these mentorish wizard roles, but she's great. She has this really solemn personality. She's very steady. You don't see her become too emotional or angry. Like no matter, like people are just throwing shit at this woman all the time. They're just saying stuff like, I hate you, I don't trust you, whatever, and she just remains calm throughout. Man, I wish I had this woman's patience, because there are moments where I'm like, if I were you, I would just slap Matt right now. If you can't tell, I'm not a fan of Matt Corton in this book. I'll talk about Rand later. Let me just talk about Matt Corton, who is just the biggest dunce in this book. So Matt Corton, who is a friend of Randall 4, like there was this scene where they're like they're staying in the city. I can't remember what city this was. It was 2 weeks ago since I read this. But Maureen gives them one rule. She's like, just don't bring attention to yourselves. There are like these half goat, half male creatures trying to find you, these beings without eyes, with black swords trying to kill you. Just don't bring attention to yourself in this city. So they're like, okay. So Matt and Rand go off. And what does Matt Cawthon do? He gets his slingshot, despite being a 70-year-old kid. He's somehow a 10-year-old Bart Simpson. He gets his slingshot, and he just, I don't know, I can't remember. I think he drops like some fucking keg on like this white cloaked person. Obviously, dropping a freaking keg on on this white cloaked person is going to bring attention to you. You had one job, Matt. Moiraine said, don't bring attention to yourselves, and you drop a freaking barrel on someone. You know, Matt, you're not just a clown, you're the entire circus. Some of the characters I do like I said, I love Moiraine. Lance's pretty cool, though we don't get much of him. Gwen is also really cool. Gwen is the so-called love interest of Randall Thor. Gwen kind of wants to be her own person. She wants to be an Aes Sedai, and she also has the ability to channel the one power, which is what this magic is called. And she wants to do her own thing. I like that aspect about it. I also really love it when the group splits because of, events, breaking of the fellowship, a very Lord of the Rings style. I like how Gwen was split off with Perrin, and them two on their own journey. Perrin meets this guy called Elias, and he begins to awaken this ability to come into contact with wolves, like he's a part of them. You can see through their eyes. This is where I really began to like Perrin. I think Perrin was interesting, and there's a lot that was explored here. And I also like the survival aspects in Perrin and Egwene's chapters. There are these white cloaks chasing them. Once again, high intensity. There's a lot of tension here, and I like that aspect of it. Also, split off with Rand and Mat. Obviously, these two characters, I just don't know how to feel about in this book. I'm not too sold on them. In their split off storyline, for some reason, they visit a lot of pubs. This book has so many freaking pubs and inns. They are constantly visiting pubs and inns. What is up with all the pubs and inns? Why are there so many pubs and inns? I don't understand it. Why are there so many pubs and inns? That is when the book began to drag down for me. When we were seeing Rand and Mat, seeking lodging in other people's houses, performing like Gleeman-esque activities to earn money. But I do like this one chapter in Rand and Mat's split-off journey where there's this innkeeper who's trying to steal Rand's sword, which is a heron mark blade, which is supposed to be really rare. And there's a lot of tension in that, a lot of intensity. That was a really good chapter. I like that chapter, and it foreshadowed a lot of stuff to come later on in the book. And that was the one good chapter, but for the most part, in terms of the split storylines in the middle section of the book, Rand and Mat had the biggest focus, and they were the least interesting, in my opinion. I would have rather had more Perrin and Egwene and more Nynaeve and Moiraine. Also, Nynaeve. Nynaeve is a little bit older than the other younger characters, and she's kind of this motherly figure for them. She gets split off with Moiraine once their storyline split off in the middle. And we don't really get much out of that. And we should have. I'll tell you why. Because there's this random insert love, like near the middle of the book, where apparently Nynaeve and Long are like in love now, despite the fact that Nynaeve, more than anyone, is completely against this Aes Sedai person. She does not trust her at all, and obviously that includes her warder, Lan. So now all of a sudden she loves the guy. She's like talking about marriage and stuff. I'm like, where did this come from? We went from I hate you to let's get married and live together and die old. Where did this come from? It's so random. You could have just cut some of the Rand and Mat chapters and just gave us some development between Nynaeve and Lan. And having read books 2 and 3, we still don't know the origin of this. How did this start? I don't know. It's just random. I don't think we'll ever get anything explaining how this started. Once they do meet up, they go visit the Eye of the World, and they visit the Green Man. It was all just a bit too rushed for me. Like, for example, they visit the Eye of the World, which is the end of their quest-like journey. That was the object of obsession. That was their goal. They visited the Eye of the World. They got some kind of treasure there. And then out of nowhere, these two Forsaken pop up. They're like, yo, I'm gonna kill you. And then shit's just flying. Moraine's using her powers against them. And then Rand is getting chased by one. Uses the one power, burns him up. And oh crap, he's a guy who can channel. Obviously, only women can channel because their magic system is tainted. So that if men channel the one power, they go crazy over time. So that's why Aes Sedai is an exclusively females only club. And Rand is a dude who can channel, and he's like, oh damn, this is bad. And as it turns out, we find out later on, this was all part of Moraine's plan. She wasn't just searching for these 3 Taravan figures, she was hunting for the Dragon Reborn, who will face the Dark Lord at Tarmon Gaidon, I think, and will fulfill the prophecies and whatnot. And that is Rand al'Thor, and that is the ending reveal of the story. Big reveal. Oh, I knew it was coming from a long way. So that was the Eye of the World. Mixed opinions. I like some of the quest-like aspects of the story. Some of the characters were well defined. Perrin and Moiraine especially impressed me in this book. Characters like Rand take some time. It's a long journey. This is just chapter 1 of his larger story arc. so I'm more forgiving of that. Even then, you'd expect a little hook, just a little hook. We don't really get that. He's still kind of a vanilla protagonist in this book. Nainu's cool. Insta love, not a fan of it though, if I'm being honest. And Gwen is also, it's pretty well defined. All these characters have just been introduced. We don't get much out of them. Matt I hated in this book. He could die, I don't care. Matt was just a dunce in this book. Why is he here? Just why? So those are my opinions on Eye of the World. If I'm to give a rating, see, I don't like giving a rating having not read the other books, because opinions change with the context of other entries. But for now, as a temporary placeholder, I'll give this a 6.5. It's above average for me. For me, a 5 out of 10 is an average book. 6 out of 10 is far above average. I'll give it a 6.5 because I really did enjoy a lot of aspects in this book. It surprisingly moves quite well. I want to say it's slow. There are slow moments. The book as a whole is not slow. There are some high octane, high intense moments that I liked. I like the village settings in the beginning, and the world building is great. Like Jordan, this is a really well defined world, like really well defined, and I have to give him props for that. But otherwise, a solid introduction. I'm intrigued about this book. Tell me guys what you think of The Eye of the World. Obviously, if you have read the whole of the Wheel of Time, please do engage with me, but please don't include spoilers because I'm going through the series for the first time. But anyway, and also I just want it to be a spoiler-free comment section if that's the case. And yeah, thank you for watching.